Hey guys, welcome to the Body Contract. This is a long video that describes personal relationships and your business relationships and how to make them grow. And the concept of control versus listening and supporting each other. So that happens in your business and it happens personally. So let's get started. So there's two basic types of relationships, right? We got good relationships and bad relationships. Everybody wants a good relationship, but we unconsciously end up in bad relationships or poor relationships, and a lot of times we don't know why. And 99% of the time, it's because we've got a trauma, that is feeding on something, and we don't even realize it. And I'm going to describe this, but I'm the last person to point a finger because I've been through so many poor relationships, and I had realized over the years a lot of it was my doing. I was attracting those types of relationships, and it was just a trauma, right? That was feeding off of that environment that I was in. So a healthy relationship, is one where we're listening to each other and we're setting good boundaries for each other. Somebody tells me what they need, then I provide it. And that's the female always matures before the male, right? Our women mature first before the men mature for that reason, because we're always listening first to see what someone needs and then providing that whatever is needed. So relationships work that way, and that's how nature works, right? It builds a field, and then whatever that field needs is what gets deposited in that field. So in our healthy relationship here, we've got acceptance. We're accepting everyone for how they are, and so we're just listening to whatever need there is. Let's say all of us have some kind of need or trauma at times, unless we're just 100% healed. But if we're not healed all the way, then we have a trauma that wants to feed. So you can listen to see what that need is, and then provide to make sure that trauma, is reduced. And so we're healing each other, in a healthy relationship, to where eventually that relationship is fully healed. And so we're always available, we're providing and serving each other, and it leads to an equal exchange of energy. And it creates a perfect amount of incentive and accountability. I'm going to use those terms throughout this video, incentive and accountability, because if we lose our incentive for even putting effort into a relationship, then we won't feel accountable for providing anything for that relationship. We're constantly, if you're in a relationship where somebody is just sucking the life out of you all the time and they're not providing any value in return, then you don't feel accountable to that relationship, and eventually you just walk away from it, and that would be the healthiest thing for you. Right? Because the last thing you want to do is just sit there in a dysfunctional relationship where all they're doing is just sucking the life out of you. There are portions of society that maybe it's your job to help people that are in that situation and teach them, say, hey, look, this is what you're doing, and make them more aware, because most people aren't aware that they're in some kind of energy vampirism. A lot of times we're not aware that we have these traumas that are pulling away on other people, and a lot of our jobs of us, a lot of us that have grown out of those situations, to make people more aware of what they're doing. And so that leads us to our poor relationships, where you're trying to control someone else's behavior. That's always going to lead to a poor relationship. If you're ever trying to control somebody else's behavior, government is a prime example. And I'm going to deal with that in the last slide, because obviously government is, it's trying to control everything. And so it's just leading to a lot of poor relationships. And then it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, because you can't control people, and you can't, all you're doing is going to be creating more and more trauma, more and more conflicts, and sucking energy out of those conflicts, right? In form of money, or another form. There's all ways of sucking energy out of a conflict. I can deal with it in another video, but that's how we make power now, right? I used to work at a hydroelectric facility where it was a conflict in the middle of the river, and that's how you pull energy out of the river. It is a way to pull energy, is to create conflict. So there's actually two ways. You can pull energy from someone in a form of energy vampirism by creating conflict, or you can serve one another and have an equal exchange of energy, and have it just be natural, so that you're always in a really good, healthy relationship and state of mind. So, of course, in our poor relationship here, we have non-acceptance. You're not available. You just, you'll cut somebody off unless, they're on your terms because you want to control that relationship. So it ends up becoming a push-pull relationship. And so it's a distorted masculine energy first, right? Because you're trying to alter behavior and then you're pulling out of that conflict. And it's an unequal exchange, using trauma. So let's go to the next slide. Groups of people naturally organize like our own bodies. So we have a relationship with both the people around us in any body and the body at large, which is the same way if you look at your cells in your own body, that each cell in your own body has a relationship with the cells around it and the body. So it's every cell's incentive to serve the body so that the body stays healthy. The same thing is true in a business or any organized group of people, because you're doing the exact same thing that your own body's doing. You're moving energy, and you're just a conductor of energy and information. And certain types of businesses, move certain types of energy, but they all are moving, some kind of product to consumer. And so it's just a conductor, and the efficiency of that conductor is how well the relationships are working inside of that business. The same way your own body works. Your own body is only as efficient as the cells and the way they communicate with each other. And this is something that we found recently, especially with cancer. Cancer is caused when the communication between the cells start to break down, and so it causes a separation there, and cells will deform and become cancerous because they're not communicating anymore. So your business is only as healthy as the relationships within it. And so if we follow the way our plant works up here on the upper right, I always like to use trees as an example, because trees will tell us pretty much, or any plant or even your own body will tell you exactly how an organized, group of cells works good together. And so your business is controlled or being managed by product and consumer, which means that if you try to manage it from the inside out, you're going to be in direct conflict with product and consumer. This is the #1 dysfunction in business that I've seen, and I'm going to deal more with it on the next slide. But all businesses are in some state of dysfunction because we have taken the governmental model and applied it to business, thinking that we need to control our business from the inside out. But our business is being controlled from the outside in. And if we try and control it from the inside out, then we cause conflict in all of those relationships, and the relationships break down, which has brought us to where we're at now. There's also outside control mechanisms that are doing things that we'll deal with in the next slide. But our heart of the business, or the owner, is serving the whole organism from the inside out, because it's in direct conflict with the market, direct contact with the market also. And so it's voicing his or her intent to the marketplace and then serving his business or her business from the inside out. And there's two types of businesses. We have a conflict type of business where we have a distorted masculine, where we're trying to cause a behavior modification to the marketplace. And then we have the other type of business where we're listening to the marketplace first and then providing a product that we believe the marketplace needs. The first example there is the predominant type of business in our society. Pretty much all of our businesses are using some kind of behavior modification. If any of you have taken advertising and marketing in college, you understand that almost all advertising and marketing is about behavior modification. You're trying to create some kind of lack in the consumer so they feel like they need to buy your product, right? And there's competing ways in order to provide some kind of behavior modification, usually stimulating the dopamine response to, feel like, oh, I need this thing, and the kids that are growing up right now are witnessing that on a much higher level than it ever has been before, compared to what we had when we were kids. When I was a kid, there was behavior modification in advertising. I think everybody remembers the ShamWow commercials from the 90s. All of those commercials and those infomercials have some kind of, you got to buy this now, or else you're not going to get it. And now they use other techniques, where very subliminal techniques, where it's actually triggering the dopamine response in your brain to make you feel like you need that thing. You know, our phones ding in a way that makes us, oh, I have to look at it. And so, unfortunately, it has led to most of the products that we see in society that we don't need, right? Yeah, we're being pulled into products that are not necessary for us because the behavior modification way of doing business has been so predominant. And one will grow infinitesimally versus the other, right? You can do all the behavior mods you want, but eventually the consumer is going to say, okay, I bought this, but I don't really need it. And so it just kind of ends up in the trash. You know, that's the negative side of doing business that way. You know, so you're constantly still listening to the market and providing something. You know, and successful businesses that stay in business for a long time are still listening to the marketplace, and even if they're using behavior modifications, they're trying to provide a product that is beneficial to the marketplace so that they stay in business. But you know, if you use this model where you're just serving from the inside out, then you're constantly listening to the marketplace and instantaneously adjusting for what the marketplace needs. You know, you're never trying to control from the inside out because that's causing conflict with your employees. You're breaking down relationships, and so they're much less likely to tell you what they need than if you were just listening to them and serving them. And we're going to deal with more than that on the next slide. So let's get to it. I'm sure you guys can hear it, but this creaky chair back here is kind of just, you know, keeps going on me. Anyway, so I'm going to spend some time on this slide. There's a lot to look at. You know, this is just kind of a example flow chart, I think, of FedEx, right? FedEx's organizational chart. And, you know, if you imagine this, you could separate this chart and turn it upside down. It could look like a tree where you've got, you know, task-specific workers where you're, you know, FedEx is providing a service and then the consumer's on one end. So, but it's all, you know, squirreled around. So we see it on here. And incentive and accountability controls everything in this thing. So the team members here, you know, they're making a certain amount of money, and team leaders, you know, you make a little more money, and then your department, you know, senior level managers are making more money. And then the incentive is actually moving in this direction on the monetary scale. So money is creating an imbalance in the relationships, and so it's everyone's incentive to serve towards the heart of the company instead of to serve towards the consumer. And we all have, anybody that's been in business has seen this over and over and over. And this is one of the main dysfunctions that I've ever seen, is that people will feel like they need to serve their supervisor because that's where the opportunity for advancement is. That's where you make more money, right? So everyone is in service to their supervisors, and that's why it's called management. But if you're trying to control from the inside out, you're in direct conflict with the fact that product and consumer is controlling your business. So that's why businesses are retracting globally. You know, we still haven't understood this point, and we need to understand that we are serving product and consumer, and we are not serving. It sounds backwards, right? Because you're creating a business that's trying to make money. So it seems like, well, the founder of the business, obviously he's trying to make money, so we're serving him, right? Well, no, he's serving the marketplace. So the service circuit runs from the inside out. And so instead of our monetary incentive is going to running completely opposite to our service circuit, which creates problems in every point of contact in our business. That includes meetings. You know, meetings turn into auditoriums where you have a leader talking, and since it's in everybody's incentive to make that leader happy, then we have to sit there and listen. And if we say anything that they're not happy with, he or she's not happy with, then we risk, you know, our jobs, or, you know, we feel like we're in service to them, because that is where our chain of command is lying, and our opportunity for advancement and making more money. We're not serving product and consumer anymore at that point. Another point of conflict are loss mitigation departments. Loss mitigation departments, you know, if there's an accident in the company, then we need to figure out why that accident happened. And the legal industry works on, assigning blame. There has to be somebody accountable in order to, settle a conflict. You've created a conflict there because somebody has to be accountable. So we're going to find this person, and if there's nobody accountable, then no accident happened. This is a problem that we see in our society. I actually have been through this before. I actually drove off the road when I was younger. I fell asleep at the wheel and I rolled a car, and the officer at the scene told me, you have to get a ticket, because if there's an accident, there has to be somebody at fault. And in the business, that loss mitigation departments treat that way. But the problem is if there's just a minor accident and their intent is good, and your team members around that person, they realize that person's intent was good, or maybe there's multiple people that helped cause an accident, but their intent was good. It was just an accident, right? If you make sure that those people are put at fault, and let's say even if you write a letter in their file, or you do some way to make them feel like they're a liability to the company, then you just created an autoimmune response in your business. And so you're not treating it like a natural body, right? Because a loss mitigation department is away from wherever that accident was. So the way your body treats things when it has an injury is the surrounding tissue starts to heal that area, right? So if you had a team, let's say you had an accident, and let's say one person got in an accident around a team, the way a healthy system would work, or a healthy body, would be those team members would assess to make sure that the intent was good of that person in the company, and then they would help heal that situation. You would learn and grow from it and make sure that it wouldn't happen again, and that's all that would happen, right? Let's say you had somebody in that team that had bad intent, and I've seen this happen where everybody was in agreement, hey, this person has bad intent, we need to get him out of here. In your body, the tissues surrounding that cell releases antibodies to move that cell into the where the liver can filter it out and deposit it in your intestinal tract to exit the body. That's a natural way a natural organism works. The way we do it now is usually levels of management come in to do an investigation, and then they're going to get different stories, and it's never going to work right because they weren't part of the surrounding tissue to that person. So you'll never know what the real intent of that person was. So even if they have good intent, and if you exit them out of the body, now you've just created a lot of conflict in the body. Now you're exiting people that have good intent out of the body, and those surrounding team members are now in a state of conflict. And now they think, okay, now we need to do as little as possible to make sure that we don't get in trouble. Our intent is good, but we know that if we make even a minor mistake, we could be exited out of the system, right? So now our incentive is to do as little as possible. Incentive and accountability controls everything. So what else do we got? Rules of entitlement. Rules of entitlement. The legal industry has been creating rules of entitlement to create equality in our businesses, right? Because all of us are equal. We're not. It doesn't matter what race you are, what you believe in, what you look like, what you speak. We're all equal, and we all have different levels of understanding, and we all are better suited for certain positions in the company. But because we have rules of entitlement to try and create equality, all it does is create inequality. Because now you've created an entitled person within your company. It doesn't matter, what race or religion or, form of identity they're using. If they feel more entitled than someone else, you've created an imbalance. And so now your incentive is to fit into that rule of entitlement so that you're more entitled for positions in the company. Because from a legal aspect, you have to look at, follow those rules of entitlement if you have a contract, if you are following that contract. And in the next slide, we're going to talk more about that to make sure that you create a contract where you have direct rules of how you're servicing each other and how you're accountable to each other to make sure that no exterior rules of entitlement can hurt your business. Because right now, businesses are falling apart. And there's a lot of people that are attacking these rules of entitlement and trying to get involved politically because, obviously it's going to continue to tear apart businesses. And I know people personally who have left businesses because of rules of entitlement, because of certain, and it wasn't because of any specific race, it was just because of what was being said and what was being promoted by the supervisory aspect of that company, and made them understand that, hey, my job really isn't safe here and I don't feel comfortable working here, so they left. Another thing is that every position is imbalanced, so it will attract people that aren't qualified for those positions. So since we have this incentive to move into positions that are not equal, they will attract people that aren't qualified for those positions. And you might think, well, how do we solve that, right? Well, in the next slide, I'm going to address that a little bit better, so we all know maybe a better idea to do that. And just like any business, you couldn't just go into any business and just change all the rules and do it just carte blanche. But you can do things in stages and change things over stages to implement new ideas in order to create more equal incentive and equal accountability for everyone. So let's look at the next slide. Now, just like in the last slide, this is a body, right? We're going to look at our body contract company as a healthy living body. And I'm going to give you an example of what I believe would be the best possible rules. Businesses obviously couldn't just like switch immediately to this, because it's like pouring Miracle-Gro on a plant that is starving. It's probably just going to die. You're going to have to implement things over time, and every company would have to be assessed as to, maybe a 3 to 5 year movement from their old way of doing things to the new way that things should be done. Because, since management is controlling from the inside out, we've created all these larger management structures that aren't really serving the business, that kind of look like a tumor, and that's what it is. It's pulling energy off of the system because it's not really serving the business, because we haven't really gotten into the fact that we're being managed from the consumer and product side. So when we try to manage from the inside, it creates these large management structures that are pulling energy. And so you couldn't just switch it immediately, because half of the people would lose their jobs, right? So you would have to make sure that there is time to incorporate all of those people that are in some of these structures that aren't needed back into the business, into positions that they really want to fill. So the perfect body contract would have some incentive rules first, because incentive is always first. You have to understand your incentives before you're accountable for anything. And so the first thing would be to have time versus position for wage adjustments. For example, every job inside of a business is just as important as another. You can't say that a janitor is less important than a manager or a senior level manager. We all have our function in that job. The problem is that there's different wages for each one of those jobs. So we've created this incentive direction that is unhealthy for our body. So to fix that, we could create a situation where the only thing that changes wage is time with the business. And this follows the natural law, right? A tree grows over time. It's an expanding awareness, and we grow over time. So our ability to serve that business will grow over time. And you can even create rules where, let's say, if you change into another position, it would set you at a certain time block. Let's say you were in the company for 10 years, and then we have maybe a 0 to 10 scale to max out on your wage for that business. If you switch positions and you have to learn a new position because you just want to learn a new position, you could pull back to maybe the 5-year mark and then grow from 5 to 10, because you already know how most of the business works. You're just learning a new position. So there's all kinds of incentive rules that we can do for our body. Ownership versus employee. everyone knows and will tell you 9 times out of 10, a employee-owned business is going to be better to work for your community than one that is not owned by the employees. For example, one of the best supermarkets here on the west side, I live in Washington State, is Winco. And Winco, I think, is over 50% employee-owned because it's in the employee's best interest to make sure that that company is making money. So the best incentive you can have is to have a 100%, co-owner business where everybody has an equal stake in ownership, and the only change in their dividend rate would be how much time they've spent there. So this is the perfect wage scenario for a healthy living body where everybody's an owner. So it's in everybody's best interest to make sure that that company makes more money. And in that way, everybody's time at work would self-adjust, right? People would feel obligated to show up for work to provide something as the market needs it. And so nobody would want to work too much time. It'd be in their interest to hire more employees. It's like, well, yeah, I'm making more money, but I'm getting overworked. I'm working 60 hours a week. Let's hire a couple more people. We'll take a little less profit just to make sure that we're in a really good balance of 30 to 40 hours per week. Nobody wants to work more than 30 or 40. And studies show if you're working more than 40 hours a week, then your personal relationships are breaking down and your family relationship, and nobody wants that, right? And if you really do the math, everyone would be making more money if they're all realize that they're in service to each other and it's in their interest to make the company more money. So you're going to be a lot more productive at work, and you're not going to have to set break times and all this other stuff, right? Because everybody's just going to be like, hey, let's get in here and do what we need to do, and spend the right amount of time with this business. And it makes it so that everyone's happy, right? And greed really is the only limiting factor resulting in a loss to a better contract. Because at the beginning, most businesses are taking a large percentage of the profits, and then the employees are just getting a wage, right? So at the beginning, there's no way that you'd be able to, just right across the board, the owners aren't going to go for it. You have to create something where maybe the owner keeps 10%, 25%, or the founder, we'll call him the founder, because if we're going to create co-owners, another way to do it would be to keep everybody employees and then use the time ratio to increase wages. But you would always lose out to another company in the same industry where somebody would say, hey, look, these guys are offering ownership for the same product. Let's go over there. So my recommendation would always be to create owners in the business and create rules for ownership. And that's ultimately what this contract is, are rules for ownership, to make sure that you know how to be accountable, and those rules of accountability is how you would get your ownership deleted. So the first thing would be, to be accountable to your peers. Obviously, those are our rules of accountability. All of us are accountable to our peers, and we're all need to grow and understand that everyone around us, we are serving everyone around us, and this is normal in life. But it doesn't feel that way in a business, and that's why businesses are so dysfunctional. I'm going to hark on this point all over and over and over. Businesses aren't functional because the accountability rules aren't correct. If you have rules of entitlement, then people don't feel accountable to the people around them. Not only that, but their interest lies in moving up in the business. So they don't feel accountable to the people they're working with. They're accountable to their supervisor, and so their accountability is in the wrong direction. You're actually accountable to the people that you're directly working around. And if we create these rules of accountability where if there's an accident, then the people that are in direct contact already know who has the best intent. And so those are the people that should also be selecting those people to be in service positions or supervisor positions, the way we call them now. Your teams already know who is going to be the best servicer of that team. And so you can use that control mechanism all the way up. And that's actually how your body works, right? As your awareness grows, or a tree grows, you can see that, at the end of that branch, that end of that limb that's been there for a long time, it grows out, and now that piece is serving all of those new employees, we'll call them employees or owners of the business. And so that's how it naturally grows, right? You find your place by being selected by the people around you, and then you move up that way. And so you can create these unanimous accountability rules for discipline and loss of ownership, and then rights to petition, where let's say there's an accident and the people around you realize, hey, this person's at fault, they got bad intent, they're not growing, they're not helping us, even though they're an owner in the business, and it's their incentive to be of service to the rest of us, they're not doing it, they need to exit, right? And so you could create maybe a 3-step process for that, where you get a couple of warnings, and then if the team around you unanimously decides you need to go, then you need to go. You need to exit the body, because it's in there. If the person standing next to you isn't serving, it's in your interest to get them out, because it's directly to your profits. That's a good incentive to being an owner. Whereas an employee might not have the same incentive that an owner does. So when you make everybody co-owners, then there's incentives to make sure that everybody is being productive and at least growing, right? You always want to incorporate rules of forgiveness and understanding and acceptance, so that people know that you can make mistakes. We all make mistakes, as long as our intent's good. And so all of those rules of accountability really work right in a nice, healthy body. Another thing it allows to do is that people don't feel like it's bad to move into a position. Let's say I feel like the people around me say, hey, look, they come to me and say, it's nice having you as, I'm an electrician, so we'll use that as an example. It's nice to work with you as an electrician, but we really think that you're not really suited, to be an electrician. We think that you would be better off, doing this position over here. Be like, okay, sure. And there's actually no difference in pay, right? Because my pay is standard over time. So there's none of the conflict between positions in that company, which means that everybody will be able to just naturally gravitate into the positions that they're most suited for. There's a lot of people, and I've been in business for 25 years, and I understand there's a lot of positions in companies that people aren't qualified for, and the only reason that they're in those positions is because there's more money there. And I've seen people actually unhappy in those positions because they knew that they weren't qualified for it, and they kind of relied on other team members to kind of fill positions that kind of take a lot of the weight off of their shoulders to do that job. And it was because they knew that they really weren't qualified for it, but they still had incentive to go to that position. And by creating those false incentives in the body, it makes it so that you don't naturally gravitate to the positions that you need to be in. It'd be like a kidney cell trying to serve as a liver cell, or a heart cell trying to serve as a part of your hand. It's made, all of us are made to do certain things. And if we take away those resistances or those incentives to go into positions that we're not qualified for, then everything just will naturally organize itself the best way. Now you can also use this, in a community. Let's say you came up with this contract and then just handed it out and say, okay, what service do you want to provide? And then you could take any size community and then take all of the products and services that community's buying or using to the larger whole, and then create something where they just everyone gets a disbursement from that whole product to everybody in the community. A community is moving products and services just like a business is. And this occurred to me when I say a lot of communities, in northern Idaho, there's, communities that they're a religious community, and they're just like an Amish community or a Mennonite community, where they provide, they might have a store and they provide products, and then the people in that community just kind of serve each other, and I don't know how they have it set up per se, or what kind of contract is there, but they do that. Another thing this body contract is that every single one of us are in a relationship that's being described by a specific contract. If you don't describe the relationship between you and a co-owner in your business or an employee, then you're allowing a third party to describe that relationship. That's the reason why the rules of entitlement are even in play. You can describe the relationship between somebody else in your business as long as it doesn't fall into unequal lines of, any kind of religion or belief system or, language or race, color, or sense of identity. And we don't want to do that anyway, right? But if you create these rules before somebody else has an opportunity to come in and make rulings for you, then you're not going to suffer from those rules of entitlement that we've seen that are destroying our businesses. So this is kind of the body contract, and I want to go to the next slide and see what you guys think of this. This is something that I didn't really understand until I started making this video, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I guess this is why nonprofits exist, right? Because if you have an entity that's trying to control a living organism, which we are, even if you looked at the United States as just one living organism, it's a living organism. So we're in service to each other. If you try to behavior mod and you try to control that organism, then you're going to split it up. You're going to create boundaries, and so you create money to regulate, how the energy is exchanged between all those individuals. And so we've got, we're all broken up into individuals and companies that are exchanging, and we're in conflict with each other. So we have to, in order to serve each other, we're putting money on the table to make sure that, we're providing some product. And since money exists, like I've said before previously in this video, money exists, and now the way we're serving each other might not necessarily be something we need, because our object is to make money instead of serving one another. So because we have this other thing out there that is it's like a control relay, now it enables us to make energy in a way that might not be in our best interest. So we're providing products that really might not serve each other. So that's one big drawback of the concept of money, obviously, is if you have this other thing out there, it enables you to push money into it, which means that it might not be actually serving somebody. And so we need to create nonprofits, right? So we have to have nonprofits that serve sections of the community that aren't able to serve people the way they need to, the homeless, the elderly, developmentally disabled children. There's all kinds of different disabilities out there. So we need nonprofits for all of that, because those people aren't able to, give a service back to the community. I think any of you who are Christians, you understand that, the Israelites and the Jews, the way they used to do it in the Old Testament is everybody would just, during harvest time, they would leave 10% of their crop so that the people who could not serve the community could still eat. And I think, that's a really good way of doing it. There are, religious sects that actually do things like, portion 10% of your money towards that community so that they can serve portions of the community that can't, interact with the community and serve the community the way they need to, which is not a bad idea, right? All of us should be taking some of our time to serve portions of society that really need it, that can't take care of themselves. So, this is why our nonprofits exist. And, because we have this distorted masculine trying to control behavior, whereas if, it's not serving us, right? They're not listening to us and serving what we need. They're trying to control and then feeding off of that conflict. If you have any doubts about that, just look about, what is propagated on the media, right? It's all fear-based stuff, conflict-based stuff. Everything is fear and conflict based, because you have to put people in that state in order to pull energy out of them, right? So, I mean, the way our society works right now is pretty, raunchy, but we're growing out of that, and structures are breaking down because of that. Businesses are breaking down that are trying to control too much from the inside out, and people are starting to realize, hey, this business isn't serving me, right? Why am I still going to work here? There's no reason for me to stay here if this business isn't serving me. And so, the body contract is all about creating that perfect organism where it is in everybody's best interest to make sure that organism keeps growing, so that everybody's relationship within that business grows together and everybody just keeps growing and growing and growing. So as a last thought, we'll go to the last slide. The fact that unconditional love conquers all things. I redid my LinkedIn profile a while back, and I put a little snippet up there about how the power of unconditional love. And when we look at this picture of the galaxy, I think that's what we're actually looking at. Because as long as we were unconditionally loving one another, we're growing closer to each other. You know, we're listening to each other. And that's part of what unconditional love is, right? You don't tell people what to do. You just listen to what they need and try to provide whatever it is that they really need. And it heals those conflicts. And if you look at this picture of our galaxy, this is kind of where we're heading. You know, I can't remember exactly where we're at in here. Maybe, you know, we might be in here somewhere, but we're moving towards the center. And so we are gradually healing all of our conflicts, and we're moving from a more conflicted area, right, where we're more separated, to an area where we are less and less conflicted. And unconditional love will take us there. All we have to do is use the power of unconditional love and understand that we are in contractual agreements with each other, you know, and we're either pulling energy or pushing energy, or we have an equal exchange of energy because we're doing our best to listen to each other and provide for each other. And that would be my perfect relationship, right? That's which I'm striving for more than anything. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and feel free to make as many comments as you like. I really enjoyed making this video. There's a lot of things that I didn't say in this video that I'll tell you privately, but reach out and I'd love to talk to you.